Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I'm Jay Edgar, and returning for the second time to Ed's World, and the only, or actually I should say the second returning guest, we have Robert, one half of the generational gap, coming to talk to us today. Robert, tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, how are you doing today? I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself on my monologue.
Are you monologuing me?
Apparently,
I'm doing good, Ed. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a good week this week.
It's been a crazy week.
It's been a crazy week. There was a little bit of a illness in my personal life with somebody I care about at the beginning of the week, but it all came out in the end, and everybody's happy with it. So I'm just happy with the way that the week turned out. Even if we have to have an extra long show, hopefully not, but because of how busy our news was going, we'll talk about that in just a bit.
Yeah. Well, it's
So
good.
just quick announcement here before we get started. Um, Next week we are going to have a new guest on and somebody that you are familiar with who's been on your show before. We have one of the leaders of the deplorable Batcave, Seawall, will be joining me next week. So
See you all.
I hope everybody's looking forward to that. There's no way I can really promote his social media because he doesn't have it out there that I know about, but we can find him somewhere for you guys. Maybe we'll put the link in the Discord in there and my fans can go and find him there.
Yeah, he's floating around out there somewhere.
In
He's
the ether.
in the ether.
Hey,
Shows up when he's least expected.
there's even a rumor that he'll show up in his airsoft armor again.
Nice, nice. It's always good when he goes incognito. He
Uh,
looks a little scary, but
it was still great though. I That was so much fun when we finished out your charity live stream and he popped up like that.
yeah, that was like, oh, great, great. That's a good finisher. That's good. We've gone militia. We've gone to a police state on the generational gap, folks.
So we've got a lot going on here this week. Looks like we're going to be starting out right away as soon as we get into the topics with our regular 2020 watch because there was some big things that went on to here, and I talked a little bit about this on the solo side of my channel. So go over and check that out. There was yet another school shooting in Colorado, and the most disturbing thing that people are talking about once again this week is the fact that it fell out of the news almost instantly as soon as it hit the news because it didn't fit a narrative. So we'll talk about that a little bit. There was some major news on the abortion front on the conservative side of the aisle this week, including Brian Sims going out and making, as you said, an asshat out of himself. Georgia put a heartbeat bill into place, and there was some backlash to that. And we saw a mysterious tweet from Alyssa Milano, which ignited the internet on both sides. So we'll talk all about that. Continuing in the Mueller saga, of course, we have Barr getting voted on for contempt of Congress. We'll talk a little bit about that. And briefly into the news, Congress talked about a subpoena of Don Jr., and we'll talk just a little bit about whether or not this is going to be legal or not. Reaching down into the New York Times opinion section, as Andrew Klavan likes to call Knucklehead Row, there was an article that was put out this week talking about whether or not we can Ross Perot Trump. And of course, we have to talk about whether or not we can use Ross Perot as a verb in this point, but we'll talk a little bit about what's going on there. And there was a trending hashtag that went out this week, given the fact that Trump's taxes were returned. Now they're calling him Brocahantas. We will talk about whether or not this is an appropriate use of the term and native appropriationism, and we'll talk about the legality of the release of that. It is going to be all this and more on Ed's World. Thanks for subscribing over on YouTube. Remember, if you're not subscribed and you like what you see, reach down and hit that subscribe button and leave a thumbs up because it's right next to there. Additionally, you have the option to go over on BitChute and watch Ed's World over there. And make sure if you do that, you subscribe and leave a comment and a thumbs up over there as well. We always comment back. If you're listening back to this on an audio platform, which is new since Robert was on here the last time, make sure you subscribe on your audio platform. We were on Google Play, Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. And if you are on iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a good review. That always helps us move up the charts. Ed's World is partnered proudly with the Freedom Scoop Media Group, and you can also find Ed's World over there on Freedom Scoop. So make sure you go over there and check that out. And now that we've gone through this lengthy monologue, we're going to get to what I tried to jump the gun on, of course. So, Robert, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a Gen Xer. Half the show of the generational gap, and they call me a boomer. They actually think I'm even. My mind goes further back than the whole Gen X, which I can understand. I can relate to. I've got some old school mindsets about where we are as a country, where we used to be, and if there's any way to, I don't know, fight our way back to that. We used to be something in this world, and I used to enjoy that. And as I've gotten older, I've become much more vocal about it, and much more. I wouldn't call myself an extremist, much more of a reactionary. I have some strong reactions to things that go on in our present day, and I don't know. Outside of that, I'm for work, I'm a writer, I'm an editor. And I love education. I want to see people educated, and I think that's a big reason why I got involved with the generational gap. Um, I think the easiest way to get to a solution is to have a conversation, and we have too much arguing in this country, like the arguing that gets a visceral emotional response, which is the end of any conversation and the end of finding any solution. So John and I want to put the conversation back in. We want to find ways to reach solutions. And if we can reach people talking about things and doing that, then hopefully we can, just like you're doing, Ed, just like all of the rest of us here in new media are doing. I think it's a big thing. Whether we'll all get shut down by, our First Amendment rights being taken from us, but that's another conversation. I don't know. But that's a little bit about me. That's, just a family guy doing my thing, trying to talk too much.
Well, you kind of took my next question away from me here a bit here, but I want to take this just a step further, just so we have a chance that you can self-promote yourself a bit more. Tell me a little bit about your show and your co-host as well, and how you guys got into doing a show like you're doing.
Well, John and I met through my cousin. He's roommates with my cousin. So we would hang out and we would have conversations. We would, because I'm real big on following, the news, keeping up with what's happening in the world. I think it's, or primarily with the country, I think it's a civic responsibility. John kind of shares that same opinion in a sense. He's more historically minded. Which is awesome because I don't like the research. So, he's historically minded, so he can draw on these things. So in our conversations, we would find middle ground. And, even with the fact that he and I are a generation plus apart, we found that we had some very strong opinions. We could have these kind of debates that ended at the same conversational level as they began. And we wanted to do more of that. It was liberating mentally to be able to do that. And so we saw, he suggested it one day because he follows, I have never been that big into social media and all of that, but he follows YouTube, and he's like, hey, check out a couple of these channels. I think it would be fun if the two of us did something similar to this. And I'm like, okay. I'll do that. And sure enough, I was like, all right, well, let's give it a whirl. We started off doing a few audio only before I started really getting into the tech part of it. It's us just trying to have conversations about what's currently going on. Social justice warriors, this whole social culture that is going on is detrimental, and I think that that's one thing that we like to discuss whenever we get a chance. Although lately it's been blindsided by political political media, so it's one of those things. But I think that there's too much inequality going on being generated by those who fight against the inequalities. But that's us in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it's a great show, and the links will be in the description below, so make sure you go over and check that out.
Yeah, come check that out. Come check that out. It is a good show.
And they live stream Mondays and Fridays. So by the time you're hearing this, you've already missed the Monday podcast, even though it hasn't happened for them yet. So I'll be there, and I'll be there probably briefly a little bit on Friday, but because of my work schedule, I can't follow the same thing. So hang out in the live stream, chat, and they read a bunch of the live chats on air as much as they can. It's always a good time.
We like to think of ourselves as a good time.
Well, I think it's about time that we move on into 2020 and talking about what's happening over there.
Over there. I love it.
So, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey this past week introduced a sweeping series of legislations that he would like to put in via executive order should he win the presidency of the United States, including licensing to purchase a firearm and to keep a firearm even, and to have a gun registry of every firearm across the country. Now, you and I have talked about this on camera before, because this was one of the topics that came up while we were having our debate a few weeks ago. So let's start out with you and how much you know about this gun registry and how much you've seen in the news already.
Well, I looked into this a little bit in preparation for the show. Overall, there's a couple of valid points, and one of them is, when he talks about licensing, there's a valid argument there. Okay, if we're willing to put a person behind the wheel of one of the most dangerous killing machines we have, because more people are killed by auto accidents than they are by gun death. Typically in this country, it swings, I know. But we license people to do that. We expect you to have a knowledge of driving before you can get out there on the road in this vehicle. So I don't have this horrible problem with requiring or knowing, I hate to say the word requiring, knowing that people have had some education about gun safety. Like, if you buy this gun, we know that that way we know it's going to be safely stored away from your children, right? Or you're going to educate your children. These kind of, I don't know. It's a fine line, but do I think the government needs to get involved? That's where I come up against a brick wall, because that's a tough one. But other shit that he's got in there, oh no, that's crazy talk. He wants to sue gun manufacturers.
Well, he doesn't want to do it himself. He wants to open the door for anybody like the Sandy
open the
Hook
door.
victim to do it.
Right. He wants to leave wide open to sue a gun manufacturer for making a gun to spec. I've said this before. If a gun manufacturer makes a gun that falls out of line with government regulations, because those are there for a reason, and then that gun winds up being used in a crime, yes, there's some recourse. There's something, right? The gun manufacturer broke the law. But if you make a 357 Magnum just the way it's supposed to be made, and somebody takes it into a supermarket and shoots a half a dozen people, that's not on the gun manufacturer. Sorry. It's just not. And these that far-reaching kind of thing just deletes any good points that this might have.
Well, the thing with licensing, and I know this lawsuit side of it was your question on the debate, but the thing with licensing was one that fell onto my side. So I've already had a chance to come up with an answer on this on the fly, but now that I had a chance to research it, I look at it and I look at the same thing. First off, you had said that they want to compare the licensing to the licensing for cars, which to an extent I'm okay with that. But at what level do we license our cars and what level do we license our drivers? It's not at the federal level.
True. That's true.
And one of the things that actually sparked the fact that we were going to have the debate that we had on your show was the fact that I don't believe that the Second Amendment extends to the regulations that the states want to put onto things. So I'm all for if a state wants to have to license you in order to buy a firearm, and several of them do, that's fine. But I don't think the federal government has any business doing that. And that gives you a little bit of mobility around this country as well, because if you don't like the gun laws in your state, the next state over likely doesn't have the same laws.
Well, you know, I understand what you're saying about the federal level, and that's where I run. You know, like I said, I run into a brick wall. Now there is a benefit in it to gun owners, though, from the standpoint that it's kind of like the fast pass at the airport,
Hmm.
where you have an ID that will allow you to bypass going through the security checkpoint,
Hmm.
right? Because you're a frequent flyer, you're always on airplanes. My brother has one, right, where he's been checked, and so his license is good for, I don't know, he I think they said 5 years, if I remember correctly, something like 5 years, and then you re-up your license. So that means you can go buy guns in that 5 years and not have to have background checks, things like this, and but from the federal level, no. But should there be, is there anything wrong with the federal government requiring some level of safety requirement from the states and then leave it to the states to determine at what level they go?
Well, and see, that I'm to an extent okay with as well, because then you're asking the states to make the legislation, and then now it's between you and your state house rather than Capitol Hill. And I don't think anything should ever be between you and Capitol Hill. I think the states or the federal government should just be passing laws down to the states and then let the cards fall where they may.
Yeah. Here's the other thing. My thought is this: um, if we didn't want to license people, and I've considered this, we insure cars in the event of an accident.
Hmm.
If you're going to own a gun, you maybe should have to have insurance on it. That way, if your gun is stolen, say it's stolen, it's not reported, that kind of thing, and it's used in a crime, there's insurance that goes against it. If it was reported stolen, then that defaults it to a different level of insurance that would still pay out any damages, some damages, should the gun be used in a crime where someone is hurt or killed. But I mean, a little bit of insurance, is that the worst? Is that a worse option? Let states manage insurance for guns. If you're going to be a gun owner, that lends some responsibility to your gun ownership, much like it does your car.
And coming from a state level, yeah, I agree with that. And in all honesty, I think we would see a lot of migration of gun ownership because of that. I think some states would enact a proposal like that, and then the people that didn't like it would move out. I think that would be the straw that would push some people to actually have some mobility in this country. I'm not going to lie about that.
Well, it's these attempts to be far-reaching, and of course that comes from a federal level. Speaking to the fact that he wants, all guns to be on one major registry. I mean,
That scares me.
technically speaking, shouldn't they be already? Guns have serial numbers. These are how they're tracked. These are how, from manufacturing to dealer to consumer, that's how guns have that information already on them. So are we really asking for a lot for that to be in a registration database of guns, which my thought is it probably already is, and enacting it just means that they go public with the fact that they already had the data. I mean, I'm conspiracy theory, whatever, but that's my thought. I mean, those numbers are there for a reason, right?
Yeah, but I still don't like that being on the federal level, especially with. I mean, I know that you say that it's the sky is falling mentality that they're trying to take the guns away, but I look at this list of regulations from Booker and I start to think to myself, is could it be that they are trying to move themselves into a way that they can disarm people because of
Well,
that?
Well, on the flip side, you would have to consider that um, it is an opportunity for someone like the ATF to stop a David Koresh when they see an inordinate amount of serial numbers in this one location, this one, this proximity, this whatever, this under these names that all share common residence in this compound. Okay, that looks like a stockpiling of guns, which I understand. Those are just their guns. I get it. But what are the guns? This, that, and the other. Are they illegal? We find these things out. That registry exists. That's the part I have trouble believing is that they don't have access to this already. If they want to find out where a gun traces back to, they can do that. And they can and knowing that, then that means they can trace where a gun went to. So, it works backwards and forwards. I don't know. Um, I think the real question, maybe that begs the real question: at what level do we already have this? Are we under the supervision of the federal government when it comes to our guns that we don't know about?
That's some tinfoily stuff.
Is it? Is it? Maybe it is.
Did Speaking of guns, did you see that story about that manufacturing or the home manufacturer that had like hundreds of thousands of guns just sitting out there? I saw that briefly.
In Bel Air, actually, yeah. We talked about this on our show. He was actually manufacturing guns out of his home and was allegedly selling them. It was actually about 1,000 guns that he had in the house. The bulk of what he had hundreds of thousands of dollars of manufacturing equipment. So he was in a residential place manufacturing guns, which breaks the law, just from a manufacturing standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't have a license to manufacture or to sell. And the conversation we had on the show was whether or not that was theft by the government. Did they take this gun owner's guns, or is it confiscation because he broke so many laws in the acquisition of those guns?
I don't know, but I have a funny feeling they're going to show up on the south side of Chicago in a few
Well,
weeks.
yeah. See,
But
there's
that's
the
the
question.
tinfoil.
See, and none of those guns are going to be serialized. This kind of thing. There was something else that Booker had in his gun proposal was the micro marking of the bullets. Did you see that?
That one I didn't see. That's interesting. Tell me more about
And
that.
so basically, for the shell casing, so when the firing pin hits it,
Hmm.
somehow, and each one is, it's unique to each gun, it's going to leave a specific imprint on the shell casing, so you'll always be able to attach a shell casing to a gun.
So the rifling and the bullet doesn't do it enough for them already
Not,
because they already
not,
use that in
not.
forensics.
Some of that can be inconclusive. This is going to be a very specific mark that's coming from the gun that fired it. That is, it's basically, my only guess is, my thought is, it would have to be on the hammer that strikes the bullet,
Hmm.
right? So I would think that would be really easy to fuck with. Like replace the hammer from another gun into that gun, and now you've got yourself, I mean, I don't know. Um,
Oh,
I
I'm
don't know.
sure that Booker's never met a gunsmith in his life. So,
Well, the real issue with a lot of the gun regulations or the things that I've seen over the last 5 years that they want to do when we're not talking about background checks is things that are going to cost manufacturers more money to introduce into the guns and then more money to the consumer. Much
mhm.
like the fingerprint ID on the gun won't fire unless the right fingerprints on it kind of thought. Um, these kind of things, I mean, you know, it's just going to cost so much to manufacture a gun that it's not, they're going to try and price people out of the market, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I could see going along with that. Plus, to do something like a signature mark on a casing. I mean, I've seen how the hammer and the firing pin hits the bullet, and that is not scientific by any means. So, Now you're laser etching something and hoping you can make it back out at the. No, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to work.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, his approach to the whole thing, I think he does not have enough legs to stand on, even from his own base. I mean, he's calling this is the equivalent of the new Green New Deal for the environment. I mean, it's just you're asking way too much.
Well, speaking of the Green New Deal, let's talk a little bit about Alexandria Ocasio Cortez because now she is openly running with Bernie Sanders. And you said off mic that you actually had an idea that went along with that. So let's go ahead and hear that on the air.
Well, for the two of them, it serves perfect purpose. For him, she is the face of the young crowd, which he is further from than he was when he ran in 2016, going into 2020. He's an old guy, right? So how is he going to relate to us young kids? My age, your age, even younger. AOC is the face of the new generation in Washington, being as young as she is. So that's good for him. Plus, she also checks off the female running mate checkbox. For her, it's basically the same thing. He is a stepping stone to her running when she reaches 35 years old. He's a perfect stepping stone. Their viewpoints, their ideologies align just enough for her to attach on. It gets her face noticed. Now she's moving even faster in Washington than anybody could have expected. So this is like the perfect team up for both of them.
Yeah, and it's eerie too to think about the fact that I mean, so many people in this country have brought themselves down to an authoritarian socialist ideal and are willing to go along with that. That scares the hell out of me.
Well, I there's really this the idea of the socialism, and a lot of people talk about Bernie leaning hard towards socialism, and I get it. He's got kind of that hippie mindset to a certain extent, tucked away back there, and it feeds right into AOC's chum bucket, right? I mean, it's the kind of thing that she would eat up as well. I don't believe I don't believe that we are going to come through the next 2 decades without socialist programs being a big part of that in some way, shape, or form. And to brand it pure socialism, I think is reaching by the other side, by any side, actually. We have instituted socialist programs throughout my lifetime. We have socialist programs that are the backbone to a certain extent of some of our government's finances. I, how far they want to go, I think AOC is a little too extreme in that regard. But I think Bernie can walk the fine line where he introduces the right kind of socialist policies without turning us into a socialist regime.
So, I've developed three questions that I always ask my guests when we go and talk about 2020.
All right.
My answers haven't really changed since last week, so this week, especially given the fact that we have such a packed schedule, I'm going to decline my answers to this, but we can always go back and look at my old videos to see. But the first question, and knowing you, having been on your show numerous times, having you been on my show before, who on the Democrat left side do you want to see make it to the end?
Are we talking about to the end to the vote or on the stage against the Republican candidate?
Primary nomination.
As it stands right now, I really want to see Andrew Yang see if he can pull it out. Joe Biden is hurting him, but hopefully, I want to see. Outside of that, I don't have a lot of love for anybody else right now.
Okay. Statistically, now we're going to take this off of your own ideas and go straight on statistics the way that you see them today. Who do you think makes it to the end of the nomination? Who do you think runs against Trump or Weld?
I'm torn between Biden and Sanders. Um, I'm going to lean towards Sanders. If he keeps AOC in his pocket, I think Sanders is gonna have the play.
Okay. Torn between Biden and Sanders. That sounds like the entire artistic title of this entire primary.
Right?
Okay, now we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. The third and final question I always ask is throw out statistics, throw out the direction you want to see this country going. On a pure entertainment standpoint, and assuming that Donald Trump stays the Republican nominee for 2020, purely entertainment value, who do you want to see make it to the end?
For entertainment value,
Yeah. Who do you think is it's going to be the most fun watching go up against the Donald?
oh God. Oh, so there again, it's got to be Sanders or Yang. I really want. I miss the Sanders. This is Sanders' next chance to relive what should have happened in 2016. So, but I think Sanders or Yang, because Yang would come at him with some math that would just blow his mind.
I appreciate the Sanders side of that because, I mean, I always say Kamala Harris on that just because she's never run against a Republican in any office she's ever held because of the stacked primary system of California. But to see two ancient New Yorkers in New York accents go back and forth with each other on the debate stage.
Oh God, I wanted it so bad in 2016. I wanted that, and they gave it to Hillary. I'm like, oh, you bastards, you bastards.
Well, we talked extensively about guns, and I've got a quick little hitter topic here because there isn't a lot of information about it because it fell out of the news so fast. But there was a shooting in a Colorado STEM school this past week. A hero student stood up and gave his life to protect his students to take down the gunman. And after we started hearing about the narrative and the lack of composite rifles and the ideology of the shooters, this fell out of the news. So, how much did you get out of this story before it fell out of the news?
From reading, a moderate amount, and then from observation, um, I really got the vibe that it was overly entitled punk kid goes into a slightly higher class school, and because it's the neighborhood, etc., and just running around with his angst, because I saw the kid when he was sitting in court talking to the judge. He's a real winner chicken dinner. But yeah, the only problem was his gun choice, and he was a week late. It was a week after Columbine when he did it. He didn't do it on the anniversary, so he wasn't that bright. And he used handguns. Nobody cares if it's just using a handgun. Like you said, speaks to narrative. But it was sad to see that a student lost his life. I don't, it's, these kids are living in a world that they have to defend themselves. But he didn't seem very remorseful sitting. It was weird. He didn't look remorseful, but it almost looked like he was either crying or laughing. So one of the two, while the judge was talking to him and he had his head down, he was either crying or laughing, but he didn't look real puffy-eyed or anything whenever he would look up and talk to her. So I don't know. I think this kid doesn't take seriously what he did, and it's just it was just a sad thing that happened. And then he got a minor embroiled in it with him too. So.
I want to talk a bit about the fact that the other student actually stood up and defended his students because we don't see that in the generations behind mine anymore. And to be completely honest, I look back at some of the people I grew up with, and it's probably a 50-50 shot at this point that anybody in my age would have done the same thing. We had some really good people in my generation, but we had some not so good people in my generation as well. So,
Well, this, he was a brilliant kid. His dad was an engineer. He was looking to become an engineer himself. He was very smart. Was into robotics. He was a heavyset kid. He looked like, I mentioned this on the show. He looked like the kind of kid that you would expect to be bullied in school,
mhm.
but apparently he was quite likable and had a good stable of friends there. But you know, he just acted without thinking, and it was very poignant. His father spoke afterwards, and his father is like, I'm so proud of what he did. He protected, he tried to protect students and save lives, and he probably did. He said, but at the same time, all I can think is, why didn't you do what they tell you on the video, in the videos? What they teach them is to hide and protect yourself, that kind of thing, run, get away. And that's not what this kid did. So, it was one of those touching moments where his father is just, you know, my son was a hero. My son is dead because he didn't follow the rules. That's a tough position to be in. But this kid was, he stepped up to the plate, and that's how that's the position these kids are being put in now. That's how they sit in class every day wondering, you know, is this
Well,
school next?
I looked back at this too, and schools are becoming softer and softer targets. There are state laws that are changing that are softening up the schools. Um, yes, you have your armed security guards, but there's so much else that you can't do, and especially in the inner city. I am so glad right now that I did not grow up in the inner city like my cousins did, like my parents did, because it would have been a completely different environment than what I grew up in. And I actually felt safe in my school, and it's not because there weren't angsty people or teens out there that possibly had a screw loose and could have perpetrated something like this. I grew up in a town of about 300 people. I went to school in the farming community next door of about 2,000 people. At any given time, with about 200 cars in the parking lot and surrounding, there were probably about 100 guns in the parking lot. You had your farmers that might have had to take the 20 gauge after a coyote out in the cow field on the way home. You had just some of the country kids out there that had them in there just because. Now, they were all cased and unloaded as per Wisconsin state law, so that was all legal there, but they were there. And anybody who would have perpetrated something like what happened in Colorado this week knew that quite well. I always say that the best defense, if there's going to be a shooting like this, is to shoot back.
Well, and I agree with that to a certain extent. It goes back to, the framers of the Constitution. They were, the mindset back then was, you know, an armed society is a polite society.
Hmm.
It goes back to that old adage. But when we're talking about situations where, okay, well, the kids can't be armed, right? So, you're looking at armed teachers, and you're looking at training teachers to be armed, and then you're asking teachers, okay, you now have to be the line of defense, or we have to, bring in X number of police to, and I mean, we're getting to a point where we physically have to turn schools much closer into the prisons we used to think they were when we were stuck in there in class all day.
That's a good point. I like that. Well, and I don't have a problem with relaxing some of the laws around teachers carrying if they've already got a CCW, if they have their own weapon. As far as the government doing it for us, no. Get that shit out of here. And that's what the hard left is trying to accuse everybody on the right of is we're going to forego textbooks and this and that to buy guns for teachers. No. Nobody wants that because the people that don't want the guns are going to use this as a point of leverage. Plus, like they said, We have got other responsibilities for school for the money that's dedicated to schools. We don't need to be dropping that in the local gun store and arming people that don't want to be armed. But the ones that do want to be armed already own weapons. They already own a firearm. They already have a side piece. They already have a permit to carry that everywhere except for the school. So why not just relax the regulation while they're in school? Get them a license so they're allowed to do it. Make sure that they're competent to do so. Put them through yet another class in order to do that because they're around kids. But let them do that. And then when the next school shooter comes around and he's starting to shoot, he has to look down that hole and say, oh, does Mr. Thompson have a gun? Am I going to lose my head if I go down this hallway?
Well, you know, it's the kind of thing, when you talk about loosening regulations, that kind of that's kind of the catch 22 to tightening regulations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants tighter regulations, but if you loosen regulations, it's that you give them an inch, they'll take it a mile. So we have to watch that we don't create a slippery slope in that direction. No, we can't expect to spend taxpayers' monies on arming teachers, or B, forcing teachers to go armed if they don't want to be armed. What we need to find a smarter solution to access to schools. So, I don't understand, why aren't there computer chip student IDs that are being tracked and monitored? So when a student enters the school grounds, if they're, yeah, sad to say we need metal detectors, that kind of thing. I get it. But, why aren't they on chipped IDs? So when they come into the school, if students are leaving the school grounds at the wrong time, when somebody comes in after the allotted time, forced entry, like funnel entry in through one choke point so that you can't go into a school without passing by someone of authority. These kind of things. It's sad to say that we've got to get to that point, but if it protects our children, it's better than going in, or going to school guns blazing, as it were. That's there's a lot of ifs there. One irresponsible teacher can leave guns in the hands of kids.
That's true.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough nut to hatch, or egg to hatch, or nut to crack. You take your choice, Ed. I'm not sure what you're hungry for.
In the interest of time, I think we should push this along here because we've got a lot to get through yet. So let's go ahead and talk about the most fun thing that we talked about, and indeed something that we got to talk about the last time you were on this show, and that is the abortion issue, because that took one hell of a twist this week in three different directions that all kind of interrelated to each other. The last item I have on my agenda here actually does relate to both of the other two that I have up here. The first thing that happened was that Pennsylvania Representative Brian Sims ran around outside of a Planned Parenthood claiming that it was the most protested Planned Parenthood in the country. I don't know if that's true or not. I never got a chance to look into that. He started hassling an elderly woman who was protesting outside the Planned Parenthood, and then he started asking people to dox some teenagers, especially some underage teenagers, outside of the Planned Parenthood. And of course, there was a backlash to that. Matt Walsh, conservative commenter for the Daily Wire, actually organized a pro-life rally outside of this particular Planned Parenthood in response to Brian Sims's reaction to this, and he actually put it together in 4 days. I was kind of impressed by that, and he had people coming from all over the country to participate. So
Nice.
I see that you called Mr. Sims an asshead in the show notes here, so how about we start with you defending that one?
Well, he's a politician, and doing that, yeah, you're an asshat. You just, I mean, come on, you don't do that. How he keeps his job, I don't know. I mean, I don't care which side of the fence he's on. You don't do that. You're not a politician. You don't do that. You just don't. I mean, you're an asshat.
Well, the doxing of the teenagers was about the most disturbing part of this to me. I mean, the elderly woman, yes. Um, if you go to protest a Planned Parenthood, you do invite some of that into yourself. If I did that, I would probably invite some of this into myself as well, and I would expect or accept the responsibility of that. That would be no problem for me because if I felt strongly enough to go and protest, I would feel strongly enough in my beliefs that I would want the world to know. But the teenagers, that's wrong.
Well, to be honest with you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter if they were teenagers or not. Yes, the fact that they were minors, that's a problem, right? Okay,
That's a
I will,
big
I will,
problem.
I will concede that. But anybody there protesting, if you are a politician in this country,
Yeah, that's the kicker right there too.
you do not harass people who are protesting peacefully as per their constitutional rights, you asshat. You are supposed to understand their rights enough to not impede, to not do harass them because you're a politician who knows how the Constitution works. You asshat.
Huh.
I can't. He couldn't have been more of an asshat if he had tried. I mean, it's just such a hypocrite. Just it's sad.
Well, and I'm sure that like if I don't know, I don't think he would do this, but like if Ted Cruz was doxing people outside of the Westboro Baptist Church who are protesting that church, would we be seeing the same reaction from the news? Or would his career be completely over at that point? Because
No,
that would be
and
wall to
that's
wall coverage for a month.
and to be honest with you, I don't, much like this situation. I mean, the constitutionality of what they were doing and how he impeded it, that is of a primary concern, right? I mean, and this is a Trumpism. This is what this is this idea that, you know, I may be a publicly elected official, but I can get away with whatever I want. I can say and do what I want because there's no recourse anymore. I've seen it from the top. This is fine, you know, and it's not. It's these lines that people are going to start crossing in our public domain. Our elected officials. This bothers me. This worries me. We have this standard set where this kind of idiocy is okay, and it's not. Now, would the media spin it from one, in one example or the other? Yeah, they'd probably completely spin it, you know, to the tune of their narrative, how it fed their narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they won't speak to the true core heart of the issue, and because that won't feed the news cycle, right? We don't want to get people fed up with their politicians because then they'll elect politicians that don't do this fun stuff that we can cover in the media. You know.
What did you think about the reaction protest that was organized by Baltimore based blogger and podcast host Matt Walsh that just came up out of nowhere?
That was pretty impressive, and if I'm not mistaken, Brian Sims was expected to show up at that and never did. Right?
That is correct, and most everybody who gathered out there to protest this was expecting to see Sims. This,
And that again points to his asshatteriness. That he, the people that are in support of him, that he's in support of vis-a-vis versa versa, you don't show up. My thought is these are the people that are making sure you're keeping your fucking job, right? The fact that they're in support of you and you are in support of them is the only thing like overshadowing the fact that you tried to dox teenagers on the fucking street and disrupted a peaceful protest. What? Where have we come to? What? It's I don't know.
well, yeah,
I don't understand him.
I'm sure that most of the people out there wanted to confront Brian Sims because of the fact that, like you had said, he doxed teenagers out on the street. I mean, the expectation out of this, and I know what the expectation was the fact that I'm sure that the news media had an army of people that as soon as that information was out, was going to put that out, and we were going to see Covington Catholic all over again over a
Yeah,
peaceful, legal protest. And
yeah.
of course, they were at a pro-life rally at Covington too, weren't they? Now that I think about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, so was he doing was he, is there some spin from his side of things where, he was doing the smart thing by staying away? Or was he, again, being an asshat and not explaining himself to the people he supposedly supports? I mean, there's certain levels there that you need to answer to your own people about. Yeah, doxing teenagers, this is not the right way to go about it. You got to eat a little crow in front of your own people, and you can't even bother to show up there. um, you know if you're going to do this shit, you got to be able to stand up to it. That's the problem, and that's where I don't think he needs to maintain his job. I don't understand how he does. I call for a recount.
Well, I call to petition Webster's to have asshatteriness added to the official Webster's dictionary.
I think ass hattery is a good one to throw in there. We'll give credit to Mr. Sims for that one.
So, one of the things that fueled Brian Sims doing this outside of the Planned Parenthood in his own district is the news that Brian Kemp down in Georgia was anticipated to sign a heartbeat bill banning abortion at 6 weeks down in Georgia. Now, Hollywood has had a lot to say about the fact that Brian Kemp is doing this, especially given the fact that they still believe that Stacey Abrams is the governor of that state, but that's an argument for another day, especially with the 6 topic agenda that we have here. But where was I going with that?
The bill.
Yeah. Yeah, but so this fueled a lot of outrage, and a lot of
Right.
people are talking about this. Cortez talked about the fact that now this is a backdoor way to ban all abortions because at 6 weeks, you're only 2 weeks late on your period, which I believe would be true. I don't know. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a woman, so I can't answer to that. And you've got more kids than I do because I have
No,
none.
it's a. Be honest with you, some women know a week into it. Some women don't know 2 months into it. It's all dependent upon the woman.
I think some women know the morning after when they roll over.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some women are just tuned to it.
So let's talk about this bill for a second here and talk about what went on in that and the initial reaction that we had to this before we went on to the big reaction.
My initial reaction to it was states' rights. Abortion is legal at the federal level. States have a decision to make if they choose to, as to when that what the time frame for that is. Well, Georgia has decided on it being at 6 weeks when first heartbeat is found. It's the freaking Bible Belt. I mean, it's Georgia. I lived in Georgia for, God, I can't remember, almost 15 years. It's not surprise. I don't shake my head in surprise at this. This is the kind of thing that I would expect. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been instituted here in Florida. But if you don't want the federal government involved, which I don't, then you're going to have to suck it up and you're going to have to fight it at your state level. And that's just it. And states are going to do these kind of things. I mean, you look at some place like Texas who, goes the route of only, I don't know, I think there's like 5 Planned Parenthood facilities in the entire state of Texas where you can go get an abortion at because they're the only ones with true medical facilities there.
Mm-hmm.
This is what states are going to do because they have an agenda, because they have an ideology at a state level. So that becomes your choice. This is where your initial free choice comes in. Either stay in that state and change the law, or leave that state and find a state that has a better law that you agree with.
Well, the interesting thing for me for the backlash is, yes, you say that this is the Bible Belt. So, and I understand that. I've never been to Georgia myself, but I've talked to people from Georgia. I understand the strength of the convictions of the people of Georgia and the fact that no amount of bullying along the lines of anybody who's going to come in is going to really change the fact that this is out there. But Hollywood has been trying to utilize Georgia lately, in years past, because I mean these big studios are paying exorbitant amounts of taxes in California because California has exorbitant taxes. So they've been trying to find places to film that are lower taxed. They have different backdrops than the California backdrops they're used to. And they've just been pumping all kinds of money into Georgia, especially given the fact that Georgia has, I believe, a drier climate than Florida does, but it is still in that it's in that vein where you can still film year round outdoors just about in Georgia. There's not
Right.
so much of a winter to speak of. Like Hollywood
Right.
is never going to move an office up here in Wisconsin
Right.
because they're only
Right.
going to be able to film 4 months out of the year.
No, no. There's always some place in Georgia, like you said. There's some place you can go. You can move down to South Georgia if it's a little too cold and getting a little snowy up in North Georgia. Yeah.
But I think that's a part of where all of this is coming from right now, especially the backlash, is the fact that now these super liberal celebrities are in Georgia, they're pumping money into the economy, and they can't change the laws and try and make this into another California.
No, and that's the part they're going to have to suck up. The any celebrity, and I do this is I always take celebrity input on these issues with a grain of salt. Over the years you've seen I've watched different celebrities get on top of different issues, whether it was Barbara Streisand, or whether it was Jane Fonda, or whether it was George Clooney. I really don't care if a celebrity gets on, because celebrities have agendas. This is the first and foremost piece on any celebrity's agenda is FaceTime, is popularity, is, so I immediately have questions about your stance on something. And yes, it's not to say that they don't have some very strong opinions and they should voice them. Sure, go ahead. But you don't carry weight with me because you're a celebrity. But yeah, they're not from Georgia. They
No.
need to shut up. you know.
Well, and that's a part of it too, is because before the big story that we're going to talk about in just a moment here, a lot of these people and even some of the studios threatened to pull out of Georgia if they pass this law. They've actually been threatening that for probably a good 6 months now at this point, because this has been being talked about since the election and Brian Kemp got in. What do you think that would, well, especially given the fact you lived in Georgia, what do you think that would do to Georgia if they did that? How big of an influence does this actually have on Georgia currently? That should be the
Well,
first part, because to the understanding that this just started.
I can give some personal input to this, actually, because my brother lives in Georgia. Like I said, I lived there for 15 years, but my brother's been living there for quite a lot longer than that. He's got raised his family there and everything, and lives south of Atlanta. Was living in the Jonesboro area, but not far from there is where they filmed The Walking Dead. So
Okay.
he's within like a half-hour drive, or roughly, from where they would film The Walking Dead, and that's been going on. What have they done? 8, 9 seasons. So it's been going on for the last decade,
Hmm.
um, and it is a boon for the area. Primarily, I think more so from the fact that more people come to the area, move into the area, that kind of thing. But there is more economy going on there. So it's beneficial. But I don't believe, and I could be wrong because I haven't seen their numbers, but I don't know that Hollywood is a big enough influence in Georgia to scare them that much, to be held hostage from a legislative standpoint. I could be wrong, but I would think that would carry more weight here in Florida than it would Georgia.
I could see that too, actually, just given the demographics down there and the fact that you've also got a Disney park down there and a lot of people that are wanting to go, because you legitimately can go film year round anywhere in Florida. You had mentioned the geographic difference of winter from North Georgia to South Georgia. But I mean, Florida is the day that
Mhm.
it got 30 below here, it didn't get below 70 down by you, if I'm not mistaken.
No, and we didn't. We only had, like this past winter, we only had two kind of really cold nights, and we didn't even break freezing this year. So, it's, yeah, I mean, you've got that advantage, but you look at somebody like Universal Studios, they have major theme parks here. If Hollywood called and said, okay, we're going to pull everything Universal out of Florida if you don't change this bill, well, now there's a conversation,
Yeah.
right? There's billions of dollars being generated by theme parks here just in the Central Florida area, but the tourist traffic into Florida alone, so and maybe it's getting that big in Georgia. I don't know, but I don't think it's right for Hollywood to even attempt to hold a government at state or federal level hostage with their money. It's just sad because
But it's
fuck
all
you,
they have.
Netflix. Do what?
It's all they have, though.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, fuck you, Netflix. I
Well,
mean,
wait, hold on. There's something else that they have, too, because that major star that has been in so many major movies and TV shows in the last 5 years, Alyssa Milano, decided that she was going to step up and call for all women to stop having sex because they might get pregnant and they might not be able to do anything about that. And the peasants rejoiced.
I believe she thinks she's the boss. Oh,
That's right, she was on that show, wasn't she?
she certainly was.
That's
Thank you.
just a little bit before I was old enough to understand what was going on in the world. So,
That was the first time I saw Alyssa Milano, and she and I were of an age where I was like, "Oh, there's a girl around my age." But yeah, it's so the first thing I think, whenever I saw that, first question, okay, what does she have coming out? She got, she's attached herself to the Me Too movement. Why? She got books, she's got movie, television. What's coming out? Is she doing something on one of the streaming networks? What's Alyssa Milano got going on that she needs to make sure that she's, you know, pumping her image? That's my first thought. And then my second thought is, are you a fucking idiot? You're going to tell you women are going to stop having sex so that Georgia doesn't keep a bill passed. I don't know that many women in Seattle are sitting around, honey, no sex tonight till they drop that bill. I'm like, no, I don't see it happening.
well, see, one of the things that I look at when I see this, I actually delved just a little bit back into this, and I started watching the last series that Milano was in again because I actually enjoyed the series. It's hilarious. She was in a Netflix show called Insatiable with former Disney star Debbie Ryan, and that got slapped so hard by the body positive movement because it's fat phobic, and they were saying that before it ever came out because Debbie Ryan plays a girl who was formerly fat and she was losing a bunch of weight. Now she's going to be a beauty queen, and they knew that before the show came out. Now, watching the show, it's a funny show, and it shows retribution from bullying is I think what one of the main themes that's going into it. I'm only 3 episodes in, but that seems to be the recurring theme of every episode is a retribution from bullying of any kind. But of course, it's fat phobic because she couldn't do anything about it until she lost all the weight. And Milano, being part of that, I'm guessing got slapped around by her feminist audience over it.
Yeah, which is, just points to the, I don't know, to the stupidity of it all. This goes to the social justice warriors. It's this idiocy, this body positivity. I mean, I have a real issue with that. Just that particular thing. Because I'm like, no, no, let's not promote unhealthy things. Let's not say it's okay to be fat. Let's not do that. Let's not tell this to our children. Let's not tell this to parents who are feeding and raising those children. Let's not say it's okay to do your thing. I I stood in the store behind a woman today and I'm just like, Why don't you want to be around when your child's older? Because all I'm seeing is you killing yourself. I'm not saying I'm living a perfect life myself, but man, it's like I try to I try to keep the ticker going so I can be around to see my kids when they get older. I
Right.
mean, they get on to me about smoking. Oh, you're a smoker. I said, yeah, I smoke. But, let me ask you this question. How many old fat people do you see? I mean, how many old fat senior citizens are there out there? It's a very small number. And there's a reason because it kills you before you ever get old enough. You reach a certain point and promoting it. You know, she needs to, if it was, I don't know, stand up for that shit. If it was supposed to be, fat phobic, fine, stand up for that. It's, why is it okay to be body positive but not fat phobic? you know? But yeah, so that's, this is that kind of thing. Is she pandering to base? Is
Hmm.
she just pandering?
Um, One of the things that actually came out of this when a lot of people were talking about the idea was the fact that Milano was suddenly advocating for doing exactly what the hard Christian religious right wanted everybody in the country to do, to stop having sex to prevent unwanted pregnancy, which seemed to be a part of where a lot of the backlash came from. I remember YouTuber Shoe on Head, who was actually a Tulsi Bernie supporter, came out and asked the question outright: is this something that 4chan came up with and everybody fell for it?
It's a thought, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you wonder because, I mean, you've got to see or would hope somebody could see the inherent stupidity of even putting that out there. Like, I couldn't put that out there even if I thought that was a thing. And like, if I thought it in my head, oh, this is what women should do, they should stop having sex. I wouldn't be stupid enough to put it out there because I would look like a fool.
Hmm.
I mean, she's she's trying to be meme-tastic right now. That's what she's trying to do, and she's going to win in that regard. She's going to get her moment in the spotlight.
And before we get out of this topic here and go on to the never-ending story here, I just want to point one thing out that I talked about this on my solo video a little bit, but I didn't I didn't think this was originally Milano's thing, and I actually looked back and I found it before I made the video. This actually originated from a a representative candidate from your state initially. Florida 18 representative candidate Pam Keith first made a tweet about this saying that we should no longer sleep with conservative men because they want to take away body autonomy. And the first thing that I thought, of course, was okay, make another class of men dangerous and ask all of the parents with hot teenage daughters who live next to guys with motorcycles how that works for them.
Right? Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and tell your constituents stop having sex because I don't want you to have any more future constituents. Shut up. Come on. These people are funny.
I don't know if
And
you
like you're going to stop sex.
yeah. I don't know if you know this or not because you have a lot of districts in your state, but where's 18 from you?
Wow. Really? You had to ask me that?
I don't know, so
Shh. Neither do like I would do.
well,
I
there are only
look like
7 in
so.
my state and I know which one is which, but yeah, like they're
Yeah. I mean, in Florida, I mean, District 18. Uh, so District 18 looks to be it's a little bit east, south, and east of us. It covers Port St. Lucie area. It's kind of a big district, actually.
okay.
But yeah, south and east.
So not something that you would really expect to go on to the sex strike per se.
No, no, and it's if a sex strike worked, I would love to see the statistics. But I asked for the converse statistics of the number of men that cheating at the same time, because I bet those numbers are proportional in rise.
So one of the constant criticisms that I heard about this when I started hearing about this was the idea that this is only punishing the constituents or the people who are allied with the women who are calling for the sex strike. And people over on my side of the universe are not going to be affected by this, except for the fact that we're now dangerous men.
Right.
What do you
Well,
think about that?
well, I don't know. I, you know, I don't care if if a woman is in support of this sex strike or not. I mean, she's got to have a talk with her husband, her boyfriend. So you can have that. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go on a sex strike until they what what? No, no, it's no, there's gonna be your white knights out there, but yeah, they have too much on their plate, making us look like bad guys as it is. Stick to making us look like bad guys as a whole. Don't separate and break us down into smaller groups of bad guys and good guys, and just we're just all toxically masculine, and just leave it at that. Stop this stupidity.
And of course, if you do try to put this on and you only punish the people that are allied with you, now you are raising a new generation of men to go onto 4chan and become radicalized from incels into MGTOWs. And when's the last time you saw a MGTOW vote to the left?
It wouldn't surprise me if this is from one of her ex-boyfriends. Could be. He's on 4chan. He's like, how can I get her back? Oh, do the sex strike. Sex strike. Yeah, that's it.
We are at 71 here, so we got to get moving on to this.
Move me along. Move me.
Yes, absolutely. So, the never ending story. The Mueller saga is continuing, of course. We talked last week when I had Steffi Cole on the show about the hearings that Barr went through and the fact that he skipped out on his hearing with the House of Representatives. From the time that I talked to Steffi on to now we're talking about the fact that the House of Representatives has voted to hold Barr in contempt, and of course it passed because it only needs a simple majority. Now, of course, we're drawing conclusions and drawing parallels to the fact that the House of Representatives held Eric Holder in contempt of Congress as well, and Barack Obama used executive privilege to get him out of that. And now there are talks of Trump doing the same and how bad that could be. So, what do you see out of this on the House side?
Um, well, it's. I think it's just. It might be just the next ploy to try and get him to overextend himself, to abuse his power. I wonder if I still think that part of this is gaming on their side in an attempt to get him to overplay his hand, give him enough rope to hang himself with. But yeah, he'll probably, if he makes the same move with Barr as was made with Holder, he'll be covered under his executive privilege. He'll blanket it with Obama's actions, and we will ignore it. We will allow it. But nothing that they've done, holding him in contempt, is not wrong. They asked for him to come forward and testify, which is within their purview, and he said no. He was coerced.
Well,
into
it
not
actually
doing so, I
wasn't.
say.
It wasn't for the testimony though either, because that wasn't a subpoena testimony, and they can't hold him in
Oh, you
contempt.
mean for the report itself?
Yeah, for the unredacted report and the fact that he was late
Yeah.
on it.
He fought compliance, but he had Trump in his ear telling him to fight compliance and to not comply with that. So, on the flip side, maybe he shouldn't be held in contempt, but of course we'd have to say, okay, this points to another, possible obstruction of justice.
Well, see, then the problem with that too is on both sides of the decision to release the full unredacted report or not to, William Barr is breaking the law. He's breaking a subpoena for not releasing it, and he is breaking a law from the Ken Starr era to release it. Because Congress passed a law saying that it's illegal for you to release an unredacted report. It violates the Fourth and the Fifth Amendments, and they just really didn't want all that unredacted information out there anyway. While Clinton was in office getting investigated, because he was their buddy.
Yeah, it's This is why I say, like it's either peach or get off the pot. Do one of the two. Um, you know, their focus is not in the right place right now. This back and forth, it's pointless as far as the report and the issue they've made out of it with Barr. The whole, yes, they have left the door open for Trump to pull some Trumpisms to where they could hold that against him, but their energy needs to be focused on the message that they want delivered to the American people that's going to win in 2020, not embarrassing themselves so much so that they don't stand a chance.
All right. So we've got one more big topic here. I'm going to cut a couple things out of this past one. So we got one more big topic here, and then we've got one more quick hitter. So let's get through this here because I know that we've both got other shows to do here at the end of this. So the big topic that we have here, and the one that I've really wanted to cover, because I wanted to do this on my channel, and then Alyssa Milano opened her mouth.
All right.
Uh, Out of the New York Times, there was an opinion article. This will be the second week in a row I've drawn from the New York Times opinion section, talking about the fact that we need to get up and encourage some of these never Trump Republicans. The author cited Mitt Romney and Ben Sass specifically to try and run as a third party because that's going to be the only way that they can defeat Trump by pulling enough votes away from him from the never Trump side and delivering the win over to the Democrats. So, the first thing that I think of course, is what happened to George H.W. Bush, which, given the fact that I was 8 when that happened, you probably know quite a bit more about than I do, but they want a Ross Perot Trump. First question that I have on this: can we use Ross Perot as a verb at this point?
I say we could try. Well, for anybody who's been involved in politics for a while, um, well, no, because you would have to just use Perot,
Okay.
and you could say it to me, and I would understand. But that's just the thing. I mean, not enough people are educated on past politics to keep up with people who ran. But so yeah, unfortunately, no, it kind of washes out. It becomes a misnomer that something that people wouldn't understand. It'll just muddy the water.
So, on third parties and getting an actual third party on the ticket that is mostly conservative to try and run against Trump. First off, you actually were adult, I believe, in 92 when this happened. I'd have to actually sit back and do some on air math to figure that out. But you were a grown adult at the time that this happened. Do you think in today's political climate we can do that again?
Well, the only way, you know, I'll quickly preface: Trump has secured his spot with the RNC.
Mm-hmm.
He combined his campaign with the RNC campaign structure, so that now that they're basically one entity
That's
working
correct.
hand in hand, which has never happened before. Typically, they're two separate entities.
Mm-hmm.
So he did that. He's made sure that they won't throw up another Republican candidate because that was something that was being hinted at. So he locked that down. So, yes, the only way is for a Republican to come in as a third party, but that must be a key talking point to get stand any chance of getting on a stage, stand any chance of getting enough voter support to put you on the stage. You've got to push the narrative. I am a Republican who must run under a third party to stand up against and go from there. But that's got to be the platform, and it's got to be preached like a sermon.
Yes, because we look at this too. We look back at the last presidential election and we look at I'm sorry to say, the joke of the Gary Johnson campaign and the fact that he had no business getting out there. And so many people said that, yes, he needs to get up on the debate stage. And he is another one. He was a Republican that was running as a libertarian.
Well, it all comes down to how much of the share you get. If you don't get enough share as a third party, you don't get the FaceTime, and that's that. It's fighting that. I mean, you're going to have an incumbent president who is going to be carrying. He's walking into this at least 50%. He's won the election at this point
Hmm.
based off the numbers he can poll at. So you have got to have somebody that can stand toe to toe with him, that's not towing the full blown traditional party line from the this old school boys club mentality. Somebody with a fresher, newer attitude that can speak to his fundamental base in the right way. That's going to be the trick. You get that person's got to pull his base, because he's not fighting for Democrat votes. He's going to be fighting for the Republican votes as a
Hmm.
third party. And pulling Trump's base, whoosh, man, he's shown what he will do to hold on to that base. How can you combat that?
Well, and I have that in the show notes too, and I kind of wanted to touch on one topic before that, but because you brought it up, let's go right into that and say, can this work, or is MAGA too powerful of a religion at this point in this country? Because I
Mm.
look at the way that the MAGA faithful are with the president, and they're growing. It seems like I see another MAGA account on Twitter every single day. That
It's
base is just growing more and more every time you look.
because he feeds them constantly. That's the trick to it. I mean, point to another politician out there that is regularly feeding their base
Barack,
exactly what their base wants to hear. He feeds into their
Sanders.
fear. Do I?
I said Barack the first time, and then I said Sanders.
Yeah.
Cortez.
Uh, but are they feeding their base enough? Look at the way he feeds his base. He feeds his base with fear. He feeds his base with, grand statements, may or may not be backed up by statistics. He makes grandiose, is it grandiose?
Grandiose.
Grandiose statements constantly, and he feeds them. He's one of the best at manipulating his base with Twitter. And I don't know, man. I don't know how you would fight it. You've got to actually be able to come out with legitimately sane craziness. Like, you've got to have some way to beat his crazy with your own brand of crazy.
So, speaking of brand of crazy, the author brought up two specific names when he put this article out, and two people that he thinks are the people that would recapture the conservatism of the Conservative Party and pull that audience back away from the Donald, delivering the win to, let's say, Biden for whatever the hell reason there. And I want to talk about these two names really quickly here because I don't see it, honestly, but the two specific names that the author brought up would be either Mitt Romney or Ben Sass.
Now, Mitt Romney, I can comment on. As far as Ben Sass, I am not as familiar with. So for Romney, I have to say the problem with Romney is that Romney is going to be speaking too much to the Christian base. And while, yes, there are still a lot of Christians in this country, when it comes to political talk, a lot of Christians are going to lean to talk about money. They're going to lean to the campaign promises to speak to their money, to their pocketbook. Fundamental Christian values are not as strong on the campaign trail as I think they used to be, depending on where you're at. But I don't think there's enough base there to support a candidate like Romney, who really comes from that perspective.
Well, and that's interesting you bring that up because I don't believe it was expressly said in the article, but I'm pretty sure that's where the author was going with that when he brought that to the forefront was the fact that he wants to speak to the Christian base again and try and pull them away from the president again to secure the victory for the other side. I look at this and I've talked about it on my show before, I've talked about it on other shows before, I've written about it. There is a massive schism in the Democrat Party. So rather than try to fix what they have going on at home, they are trying to put a massive schism into the Republican Party as well. The progressives and the union workers, or yes, the progressives and the union work Democrats do not fit well together. They can come together for a common goal, but they are two vastly different ideologies.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I think that the problem with any candidate trying to sway the Christian base, Trump's got him. He's got a lot of the Christian base, and what makes his base even stronger is that those that aren't Christian, he speaks to them in the same extreme language because people have been wanting change in government. They want change in politics. They're fed up. And that's on both sides. So he pulls his base from both sides of the spectrum simply because he calls it out and he makes Washington look so inept at their job. He makes America, from a political standpoint and a global standpoint, look like we are chumps. And that speaks to so much more than Christianity. Trying to pull the Christian base out from under him is not going to get you a win.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough people.
And honestly, the thing with it too, I hate to say it, but I mean, with Trump, it's so much of the religious community is out there, and they look at a religious leader out of this as well. So it scares me to think that Donald Trump is a religious leader, but I mean, what
Well,
else do you see him as at this point?
well, he's an extremist,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what he pulls on. You know, even in the hearts of Christians, is that extremist mentality that is inherently a part of religion. I mean, there's the inherent extremism in religion is that you believe in something that is totally unprovable, and you have to stand firm on that belief for the rest of your life and defend that belief.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's an extremism there where, so you can easily tap into it. People read in the Bible some of the extreme measures that their own God went to. Well, the MAGA God is doing the same thing. He's going to extremes. He's going to pluck on your extreme heartstrings. And he will do that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, a libertarian. It doesn't matter. He finds a way to pull on those heartstrings and strengthen his base.
What's interesting to me when I think about the idea that Democrats now want to see the Republican National Committee or just the people in general put up a third party, and they bring up the names Sass and Romney, is just the mentality of the Democrat Party as well as the mentality of a lot of the followers of the progressive movement and just the followers of the big government movement itself. Now, there were a lot of people that wanted to see our president impeached, and there are a lot of people that do still want to see our president impeached. And by all rights, as far as conservatism goes, the next person in line behind the president is a very, very hardcore right wing Christian conservative, which to think about this, you would think that that would stand against everything that the people that are trying to impeach him want to get into office. But what is Mike Pence that Donald Trump isn't? He's a longtime politician who has been in this game. He's somebody that they know, and he's somebody that doesn't shake the boat and make it okay for a person like you or I to run for office. And now they keep bringing up the same idea, trying to get votes for people who are the same thing. Mitt Romney, a lifelong politician, and Ben Sass, who's been in the machine for a long time as well. The same strategy that they keep seeming to go back to is the idea that they want to have lifelong politicians that they know, trust, and can control at some point. The Donald is a very loose cannon, first off, because they don't know what he's going to do. He's more attuned to the Democrat side of the aisle with his business ties, his business dealings, and his more liberal mindset in the idea of sex and marriage. But on the same side of it, he is somebody from the outside.
Well, I think all of it really speaks to, you know, The simple fact that the Republican Party doesn't have a set of testicles amongst themselves because you don't have to support the incumbent president. You don't have to. You can put somebody else up, and they don't have the balls. So, from that standpoint, yeah, I mean, Donald Trump feeds into everything that they wanted for the Republican Party because, yes, he does. He is very much Democratic in his mindset. There's a lot of things. I think he's changed his public opinion on many things throughout his campaign and his presidency that would go against things he said in the past. And his ideology as a businessman before he got into this political ring. Um, yeah, he fed them exactly what they wanted. They don't know how to put the fucking snakes back in the can. And so all they can do is scramble around and try and think of some loophole. And the bottom line is grow a pair. Don't support him. Get some new blood in there. Done. But they don't. And I don't know why.
Well, with that being said, I've got one more quick hitter here. So let's, as long as we're talking about Trump, let's get this done and we'll close out the show. So there was a trending hashtag I noticed yesterday, and I threw this in the show notes as soon as I saw it here because after the release of 10 years of Trump's tax returns from the 80s and the 90s, some of the legality of which is questionable at this point, Bill Maher coined a new nickname for the Donald called Brocahontas. And of course, it started trending around there, and everybody wanted to suck up and be Bill Maher's new friend because he came up with this. I think it's I know why they did it, obviously, because of how he treated Warren, but I think it's politically unpalatable. I think that it's going to grab the attention of a couple of extremists, and then it's going to turn into an issue of cultural appropriation again. But how much did you see about this? I know you said off mic that you didn't see a lot about this.
Well, as far as this particular new nickname, no, I haven't. I hadn't seen much about it, but I have been a fan of Bill Maher for a long time. And one thing I do know about Bill Maher and Donald Trump is this antagonism between the two of them goes way back. I mean, Donald Trump has actually tried to sue Bill Maher for his comedy about Donald Trump. So there's a deep level of antagonism there. So seeing this name, no, that's not surprising. Do I find it politically unpalatable? No, because Trump does the same thing. I mean, he does it to everybody, Sleepy Joe and, Crooked Hillary and everybody he throws a nickname at him, just like he did Elizabeth Warren. So it's just kind of feeding into his mentality. The only way to get his attention is, come down to his level in a sense, but that's Bill Maher, he's a pundit. This is his job. I think if it gets the Donald riled up to where he makes a few tweets about it, then Bill Maher's done what he wanted to do out of it. You got to poke the bear sometimes.
So, what do you think about this release of the 10 years of the tax returns from the 80s? Because it shows that he lost a lot of money in a time where we were actually starting to see a downturn in the real estate market.
Well, it's if this had anything, if those tax returns were come by, because I know that in New York there is an ongoing investigation into the Trump campaign and misappropriation of campaign funds, blah 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 blah. So I don't know if it's related to that, how specifically they were come by, but if they were come through by, if they were acquired, excuse me, through legal channels, I have no issue with it. I've always had an issue with Donald Trump being the one president since the Nixon presidency who is not willing to release his tax returns. It's this kind of thing where it's like, okay, you claim you're worth $10 billion coming into this election. Well, show us the numbers like every other presidential candidate has done for decades. Why, that was one of those first things where I'm just like, okay, that that's a shade. There's something shady there, right? There's a reason why, because a narcissist does not want holes poked in their delusional bubble, right? And that would be a way to do that. Um, but he did lose a lot of money at that time. And ironically, he just referred to, and I forget who it was. He called somebody in Washington. He said he looks like, called him Alfred E. Newman because the guy shares resemblances with Alfred E. Newman from Mad Magazine,
That's
right?
Buttigieg.
Huh?
That's Mayor Pete.
Yes. Okay. And then in looking into the article and reading it, they had some clips from Mad Magazine. Well, back in that during that time, Mad Magazine, of course, being politically pundit capable, had actually had a bit that they did in there about Trump being broke. I wish I had it on tap, but it was funny. It was a bit that they had done back then because Trump was in Mad Magazine multiple times. I mean, because he was a face out there with all that money, and
Mm-hmm.
they tend to love that stuff. So. It's what you get. It's you throw shit. Sometimes it splashes back on you. But were they legal? That's the question. And if they were, well, it's very telling.
Well, one of the things too, and obviously most of the people in I almost said Hollywood, but DC probably have not read any of Donald Trump's books. Michael Knowles on his show pointed out the obvious fact, and I didn't realize this, and I actually went back and I checked his work, that the fact that Donald Trump lost all of this money in the 80s, he was in a decline, and part of that was because of the market at the time. He'd already written about that in The Art of the Comeback, so this was already public knowledge to begin with in the time period that they released the tax returns for. So honestly, I don't know if this is going to be as big of a deal as Mar is trying to make this out to be.
Well, he's again, it's just an opportunity for two pissy kids on a playground to take a shot at each other, right? That's what these guys do. They both get 12 years old when they're dealing with each other. But the problem I have is that is how Trump basically looks at it. Look, I knew how to play the sport. I knew how to play the game. The loopholes were there. I knew how to handle it to where we always showed a loss as much as we possibly could. It's just playing the game. It's just what you do. And I'm like, God damn it. Do I really? So there's my president tell me that he will. I don't know what the best corollary word for it would be. Whether it's corrupt, whether it's it's not embezzlement. It's not. I don't know what you would call it, but gaming the system to keep from paying taxes. Doing your part. It's like then I don't want to hear you bitch when Amazon doesn't pay taxes for 2 years and call Jeff Bezos out for not doing so. Don't. That's when he becomes a hypocrite. And yeah, if he wrote about it in The Art of the Comeback, it's not surprising because he sees it as a business tactic
Mm-hmm.
to do whatever by hook or crook to keep the money in your pocket.
Well, that's all that I've got out of here. So we're at about 99 minutes right now. So what do you say we run through the outro and get the hell out of here?
I'm willing to outro with you.
All right, as we always do on Ed's World, because the world of politics is so divisive, there's so much bad news out there and so much stuff that makes people hate each other and makes people unhappy. Let's end the show on a positive note. Robert, tell us about a hobby that you have that has nothing to do with politics, that has nothing to do with work. It could be a new album that you're listening to, a video game that you've been playing, a new kind of music you've tried, gardening, or a new kind of dish that you've tried. Let's hear what you've got going on in your life.
Actually, gardening is actually the thing. My wife is a very avid gardener, and so I am her Joe. I'm her Friday. I run around and I build, set up flower beds for this kind of thing. Do some of the fence construction, because we have a certified wildlife habitat here in an urban environment, in our quarter acre lot. And I've grown to love helping her take care of that. We get some of the most beautiful flowers I've ever seen in my life going on in this garden.
And that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you for coming on this show again. That's always helps me out. And I want to thank the audience for taking the time to tune in. If you like what you see and you want to finish out the conversation with either Robert or myself, you can finish the conversation with me on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I, or you can comment below. Over at Ed's World, we always tweet back and we always comment back on YouTube, so we'll look at that. If you want to finish out the conversation with Robert, Robert, why don't you tell us where they can find you and finish the conversation with you?
Well, you can find us on YouTube at The Generational Gap on YouTube. Like was said earlier, we run a stream on Monday nights and Friday nights. You can also find us on Twitter at the Gen Gap P, the Gen Gap P, and we also have a Discord server, the Generational Gap Discord server. Your folks are always welcome to join there. We always have links to those in our descriptions on our channel. So yeah, stop by, listen to some of the crap we talk about, and we always have Ed showing up sometimes, running around. You'll also often see him popping in on the show. It's one of my favorite things.
And that will all be linked in the description below. And hey, while you're looking at that description below and you've already swung by the subscribe button, why don't you pop by and hit that subscribe button if you like what you see. And hit that thumbs up button. That really helps us move up in the algorithms on YouTube and helps to get us more attention and get our message out there. If you are following back to this on BitChute, again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and help us move up the algorithms over there. If you are listening back to this on the audio platform, thank you again. We are on Google Play, Stitcher, and iTunes. And if you're on iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up their algorithms as well. Helps us reach a newer audience. And finally, if you are checking us out on any of the platforms mentioned before and you want to see and support a better cause and help other new artists get out there and start to get their message out there, why don't you go have a look at us over on freedomscoop.com. All of my content is over there, including all of my solo videos and all of my podcasts as well. And you'll be seeing some new writers and some new podcasters show up over there as well. It's a great place to get your media, and it's a great place to help out others who haven't had the recognition that they deserve. As always on Ed's World and on my channel, we always say, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Robert, you have last word.
Well, first, real quick, Ed, thanks for having me. This is always fun. I love it. And folks, come check us out. And remember, solutions can't be had without discussions, and discussions are never had if you don't have an open mind. So keep that in your open mind. Ed, thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Robert. Take care, everyone.